All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Gorowski, and I'll be your host for today. I'm coming to you from New York, from the Explorers Club today, in the map room on the 5th floor. So you might hear a little bit of an echo because the ceiling is pretty high. And we are celebrating World Ocean Week this week. So this week we've hosted 16 scientists, explorers, filmmakers, researchers from all over the world. They've been sharing all the incredible work they're doing to explore, to understand, to document our blue planet. Lots to go this week. We still have more events coming to you live today. We've got a series of live events tomorrow to wrap up our Ocean Week. So if you head to exploringbytheseat.com/Ocean Week, you can find all the live events we have coming up. Register to grab a camera spot, to tune in live via YouTube, or to watch the recording of the event afterwards. So let's get right into today's live event. I'm really excited to have Amber Sparks joining us. She is a marine biologist, educator, and entrepreneur, and she is learning more about the benefits of creating artificial reef ecosystems. So she's the co-president of Blue Latitudes Foundation, whose mission is to elevate the traditional concept of ocean stewardship by uniting government, industry, and community to work together to conserve our oceans. She's also a PADI certified rescue diver and Ambassadiver, and we're going to talk to us a little bit today about rigs to reefs. So I'm going to bring Amber in here live with us right now. Hey, Amber, how are you?
Hi, Joe. Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Great. Amber, where are you joining us from today?
I'm calling in from Southern California. So on the other side of the planet from where you are, other side of the country, at least. Yes.
On the West Coast. Very cool. Yeah. So Amber, we've got a great group of classrooms tuning in with us live via YouTube right now in Canada and the US. They're going to send us some questions. We're going to play a little Kahoot. I'm going to make a quiz while you're presenting, and then we'll spend the rest of the time doing a little Q&A action.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you take over for a little bit.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you. Hi, explorers and everyone here today. Happy World Oceans Week. It's such a privilege to be here to share with you some of the research and work that I've been doing as a marine scientist, looking at how we can repurpose offshore oil and gas platforms into permanent artificial reefs. I'm Amber Sparks. As Joe mentioned, I'm co-founder of Blue Latitudes, and I just absolutely love preserving and protecting our oceans at this unique intersection where industry and the environment meet, and finding positive, sustainable solutions for our oceans.
Rigs to reefs is when an offshore oil and gas platform is converted into a permanent artificial reef installation. The second you slip below the surface, that's when the entire picture changes. Something that's associated with something so negative can also be home to some of the most robust ecosystems on the planet. And that really gives me hope for the future of our oceans. We can actually make a difference.
Just had a little quick video intro there to introduce you to Blue Latitudes and some of the work that we do. Emily, my co-founder, who's not here with me today, but we met at Scripps Institution of Oceanography and at UC San Diego back in 2015. That's where we were getting our master's degrees to really learn about the oceans. And we did a joint thesis on the feasibility of a rigs to reef program in California. How possible would it be from an economic, an ecological, and a social perspective to repurpose the 27 offshore oil and gas platforms in California into permanent artificial reefs? From there, we went on to become Scuba Pro Deep Elite ambassadors. So we work with the Scuba Pro team to dive on unique ecosystems around the world. We've released multiple award-winning documentary films. We were listed on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list for the energy sector for reaching across the aisle as scientists and working with the energy industry to find sustainable solutions for our oceans. We've also had a couple exciting projects that I'm going to dive a little bit more into. We've gone into how can we use software and machine learning to enhance our scientific abilities to understand our oceans. And we were also listed in 2022 as the Explorers Club top 50 people changing the world. So that's one of the reasons why we're connected and we love the Explorers Club. It creates an amazing community and brings together people from around the world to explore and really find ways to protect our oceans and our world. But thinking about rigs to reef, globally, there are over 12,000 offshore oil and gas platforms. And from the surface, these structures look like menacing industrial giants. As you sit back on your beach chair, you may never imagine that below the surface, there could be so much more. Yet today, we've repurposed over 600 platforms into permanent artificial reefs. What this means is that we remove the top side, or what you see from the beach chair, and the wells are sealed and capped, so there's no more oil drilling. It's just this infrastructure, the beams and cross beams, that gets permanently repurposed as an artificial reef. In California, there's been decades of research on these platforms, and they've been found to be some of the most productive marine habitats globally, more productive than mangroves or coral reefs. But when it comes to decommissioning, and when you're looking at these structures, some the size of the Empire State Building, decommissioning can be not only technically challenging, but have environmental impacts as well as significant financial costs. So what Rigs to Reef does is it provides an alternative to which an oil company can choose to modify its platform so that it can continue to support life as an artificial reef. Each platform has the capacity to provide up to 6 acres of habitat and provide artificial reef or reef habitat that mimics the natural environment. In some places, they might topple that platform jacket on its side. They could remove the upper 80 feet that allows for ships to safely draft over and either place that upper 80 feet on the seafloor or dismantle it on shore. Or that structure could be towed to an area of ecosystem need. So these are 3 different versions of a rig to reef decommissioning scenario. No matter which rigs to reef decommissioning scenario is selected, the wells are always sealed and capped. And should there ever be a leak or a spill, the oil companies actually have liability for those wells in perpetuity. So they would be responsible for any cleanup or damages to the environment. And the top side, or what you see from your beach chair, is removed. So it's really just that infrastructure that is repurposed and remains in the water column to continue to function as an artificial reef. There are oil platforms in every ocean, and we've worked on these platforms in several different areas: in California, in the Gulf of Mexico, in Mauritania, off of Africa, and in Malaysia. But our work is not just looking at offshore oil and gas platforms. We also can see that there's alignment with what's coming up next, looking at offshore wind farms and the development of offshore wind, and understanding that these structures have a very similar design to the offshore oil and gas platforms, albeit the energy that they produce is much cleaner. So what we've developed at Blue Latitudes is a software called FishLat, Fisheries Location Assessment Technology. This helps us predict how decommissioning and development will impact fisheries. This tool has been critical for us to really look at these impacts from a desktop perspective, which means we don't have to go diving on every reef ecosystem to understand how development or decommissioning on our oceans is going to impact fisheries and the people who rely on those resources. This is a little scenario introduction of FishLat. Basically, you can go in, select a location, let's say a oil and gas platform, and understand the impacts to fish abundance, or perhaps how a future wind farm could impact commercial or recreational fisheries. And this helps both regulators as well as industry stakeholders get access to the best available science and data to help them make decisions regarding reefing, removal, or future development of offshore structures. Blue Latitudes, as I mentioned, we began in 2015. We've worked in over 4 countries, and we've served clients that include both state, federal, and federal governments, as well as offshore energy companies. Our work is really centered around the environmental conditions of these reefs. So we'll do remotely operated vehicle surveys, hydroacoustic surveys, diver-based surveys on these platforms to capture the marine life that's present and qualify if that platform is a good candidate to be reefed or if it should be removed. And overall, in our work, we've conserved over 24 acres of habitat on these repurposed oil rigs and preserved the lives of over 50,000 fish. Our team is all female. We're a women-based team, women-owned and managed, and we have a large and diverse media reach. You can find us on Instagram at Blue Latitudes Foundation. We really use Instagram and our videos, as well as our YouTube channels and major publications, as a great way to connect with the general public and introduce them to these sometimes complex ideas in ocean conservation. It's not always obvious that there can be a win-win solution when working with industry. So we really try to convey that message through our media reach. So please give us a follow on Instagram at Blue Latitudes Foundation, or feel free to reach us via our website or other media portals. And here's a little bit more information about where you can find us on Twitter, as well as our website. And I'm really excited to dive in to your questions and get to know a little bit more about what interests you guys. So please, let's get into it.
All right. Thank you, Amber. That was such a great presentation, and that's such really exciting work you're doing, giving kind of a new life to those rigs. And it sounds like they're just absolutely amazing biodiversity hotspots. That's really cool.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to load up a Kahoot quiz in just a second. I'm just putting the last picture in place. But while I'm doing that, I've got a question that's already come in from Miss Colburn's class. So we're going to start with that question, and then we'll play some Kahoot together. So let's switch views a little. There we go. So they're a 7 and 8 group. They're a virtual class, and they are studying sustainability. So they heard you talking about sustainability. And so they're wondering, are there other ocean technologies that you're excited about that are coming down the pipeline to help us protect and preserve our oceans?
Oh, that's such a good question. Yes, technologies are really leading the forefront. Technology is so important for our understanding of our oceans and how we can better protect it. One piece of technology that I'm really excited about are remotely operated vehicles. So these ROVs have become so advanced. They have high resolution videos and laser scalers to help us size fish underwater. And with ROVs, we're able to explore our oceans at depths we've never visited before and better understand deep sea environments, as well as taking samples from those environments. So using ROVs is a really great technology advancement that's allowing us to better understand and explore our oceans at new levels. Another piece of technology I'm really excited about is satellite technologies. So these organizations like Global Fishing Watch are using satellites to track fishing behavior in our oceans. So in the same way that you can track your kids via their cell phones, we are actively tracking fishing vessels using satellites. And this is important because it's allowing us to understand where fishing activities are happening, especially where illegal fishing activities are happening. To give you an example, we started looking at how squid fishermen where they are fishing and when they are fishing. What we found is that the majority of squid fishing is actually happening in open, unregulated waters. So they're not actually following and abiding by a lot of the regulations, which is going to be a big problem for that specific fisheries. So using satellite technology, we're able to track and monitor fishing behavior in our ocean and hopefully better deploy enforcement so that we can ensure compliance with regulations and hopefully find a way to manage our fisheries sustainably. As you might know, many of us enjoy fish. It's an important resource, an important source of protein for many cultures. And so to ensure that fisheries last for multiple years, we need to be able to manage them effectively, and satellites are helping us do that.
All right, Amber, well, let's play a little Kahoot together. I am going to load up the screen share, so just bear with me for a moment. All right, and we need to get our classes coming in here, kahoot.it, and our PIN number is 545-9903. We'll just give a moment to get a few classes loaded in here, 554-9903, and I'll be with everybody in just a moment. All right, I see we've got a few groups starting to join us. If you have a device at your seat, you could use like a Chromebook or a tablet. If not, your teacher could pop it up at the front of the room and you could shout out your answers. I do see a teacher saying, give us a few minutes. We're getting a few more logged in, so we'll give you a few more seconds. So maybe we'll do another question. There's a lot of questions already coming in the chat, Amber. And so we might as well work one of them in while we wait a few more moments. So let's see. Mr. Prezio's class is hanging out with us, and they are wondering if there's a lifespan to the reefs. Are they going to fall over or rust apart in the future?
That's a really great question. And the interesting things about an oil platform is that it was designed to be stable in the water. With that, however, it is made of galvanized steel, and over time, these things will corrode and rust. Right now, the best thing we can do is look at shipwrecks or other sources of similar materials in the ocean. And they've anticipated that the structures will stand for between 300 to 500 years before requiring any maintenance. And so that's a pretty long lifespan for those reefs. They also see that because they are covered with different invertebrate growth, that actually slows down the process of oxidizing the metal, and therefore will hopefully add to the longevity of those platforms. So it's not a perfect solution to repurpose a structure as a reef, but what we're really looking at is that these reefs have already developed on the platforms. And when it comes time to decommission or remove them, we are really faced with this question of, should we remove them or should we let those ecosystems stay in place and try and manage that structure as an artificial reef moving forward? So with that understanding, it really presents this idea of reefing to hopefully create a benefit for the environment moving forward.
All right, we're ready. Let's play some Kahoot. I got the thumbs up from our classroom in Missouri, so here we go. We've got a few questions here for you, some true and false, some multiple choice. The quicker you get that right answer in, the more points you're going to get. Here we go. Question 1 is a multiple choice. There are about how many oil rigs in the ocean? 1,000, 5,000, 12,000, or 20,000? So about 1,000, 5,000, 12,000, or 20,000. Got a few more seconds to get your answer in. All right, about 12,000 rigs in the ocean. Let's take a look. The swift mouse has swiftly taken the lead. So let's go to a true and false question. Each rig can provide up to 6 acres of habitat. True or false? So each rig, about 6 acres of habitat. True or false? You've got about 7 seconds to get locked in. All That is absolutely true. Let's go to our leaderboard. Dr. Cheetah is in the lead. So which way are reefs not created? So we want to pick the one that doesn't belong. Is it toppling the rig, removing the top part, crushing the rig, or towing to a new area? So which one doesn't belong here? Toppling the rig, removing the top part, crushing the rig, or towing to a new area? Okay, crushing the rig like a soda can. That is not one of the ways that Amber talked about for creating one of those reef systems. And Amber, I imagine, even before one of those methods is used, the oil rig's been there for a while, so it's probably already started a pretty good community on it.
Absolutely. Yes. Most of the platforms offshore already have vibrant reef ecosystems growing on them.
All right. Epic Jaguar taking the lead. We've got one more question. It's a true and false. Once a well is capped, it's no longer the responsibility of the oil company. Is that true or is that false? So once a well is capped, it is no longer the responsibility of the oil company. Got about 10 more seconds to lock in. True or false? It's no longer the responsibility. All right, that is false. If something were to happen with that capped well, it would be the oil company's responsibility to do something about it. In third place, our podium, we've got the expert goat. In second place, the fast yak. And holding down that top spot, we have the epic jaguar holding on for the last two questions. All right, let's come back from that screen share. I'm going to turn off the Kahoot music. There we go. And fill that chat with questions for me. I already see a whole bunch in there, so let's get going. All right, so okay, so our class in Missouri wants to know what is meant by saying an artificial reef. Why do you use the word artificial?
Sure. So artificial reefs are man-made structures that mimic the natural environment. So the artificial part means that it's not a natural material. It comes from galvanized steel, or in some places they throw tires in the ocean, or subway cars off of New York. All of those are in an effort to create artificial reefs, trying to use this hard structure in the water to attract marine life and create a reef ecosystem that mimics the natural marine environment. And artificial reefs go back millennia. They used to be traditionally used by fishermen who would place different structures on the seafloor, maybe nets or pieces of concrete, things like that, to attract fish to the structure. And that way that would make it easier for them to catch. We also see that artists might use artificial reefs. Artists can place structures on the seafloor and look at how marine life will slowly colonize their art to make it more beautiful or things like that. So artificial reefs can take many different meanings, but primarily what they are is a man-made structure that's placed in the water to mimic the natural marine environment.
All right, let's grab another question here from the chat. This is from Miss Cork's group, and they want to know. So you talked about the methods of taking off part, toppling. Is there any other modification that needs to be done to make the oil rig safe and ready to go?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And actually, it's relatively simple, from the idea that you need to seal and cap the wells on the seafloor, remove the drilling infrastructure and the topside facility, which I guess it sounds really easy to do that, but it is a complicated technical offshore deconstruction project to do that. But then the platform itself doesn't require any maintenance or modification unless they remove the upper 80 feet, in which they would go down 80 feet in deep, 80 feet water depth below the sea surface, and they would sever the platform. They can use a sort of diamond severing tool to slice the platform, and then they would remove the upper portion.
All right, let's take another scan here. All right, here we go. So, okay. So that's our class is commenting on the answer you gave us, that it's not perfect, but 300 to 500 years is pretty long. So they were talking about the, how long one of them can be without maintenance, which is pretty cool.
Right.
All right. Another group is wondering about things like rust. Is that an issue at all, or are they pretty, I guess, sealed or treated to avoid that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So when placed in the water column, these structures they don't rust in the typical way that you might see a structure rusting, in your backyard or on shore. These structures are going to have oxide. They have lots of marine life that's growing all around them that slows the oxida. Oh my Lord, I can't say that word right now. But there's a oxida. When the oxygen is coming in, it's not able to get to the metal as fast because all that marine life is covering the platform. So it slows down any sort of rusting or issue of corrosion. The oil company also places these structures called cathoids on the platforms, and those act as negative ion structures that actually pull the rust from the water to prevent and slow down corrosion of the structure itself. So that's a really interesting tool that would not be maintained if the platform is reefed, but it's used to prevent any sort of corrosion or slow down corrosion. And there are several of them on a platform. Maybe you'll see one or two every 100 feet.
All right. So we want to get into the marine life here. There's a couple questions. On one side, our group in Missouri is wondering if there are species that maybe benefit more than others from the reef. And then on the flip side, are there any examples of a species where maybe for some reason there isn't a benefit to the reef?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes. So every oil platform reef is mimicking the natural environment. So we're going to see different species on a reef in the Gulf of Mexico than we will on a reef in California. The species that benefit let's say in the Gulf of Mexico, for example, are going to be the commercially important species. So we'll see different red snappers, grouper, amberjack that are attracted to the structure because in the Gulf of Mexico, it's a relatively sedimented environment. Naturally, there's not a lot of hard structures, or there are not as many natural reefs. And so what these platforms do is they create hotspots of life in this large sedimented environment. And so the fish are attracted to these hotspots of life for feeding opportunities, for socialization, for shelter. And so we'll see so many of these commercially important fish that go to these platforms and are really taking advantage of the benefits of the structure. I also liked your question about negative species, or if there could be a negative animal or environmental component. And one issue is we do see that some of these structures can house invasive species. So invasive species are species that are not native to that specific environment, and they can often outcompete the natural species. And that creates a problem for the native species because now they are not able to compete. They have limited resources, limited food, limited shelter because the invasive species are taking over. So I'll stick with the Gulf of Mexico for my example here, but in the Gulf of Mexico, we see the invasive orange cup coral, which is a bright orange coral that can grow on the oil platforms. And they've studied this orange cup coral on the platforms. And what they found is that while, yes, the oil platforms are creating stepping stones for the spread of this invasive species, and they're not spreading at a rate any greater than the natural reefs. And so they are present there, but they are also present on the natural reefs.
There we go. We've got great questions coming in here. We'll squeeze in a couple more before we sign off for today. So let's see. Oh, this is a question about diving. So obviously you've been able to explore and dive on some of the rigs. What's it like to dive on a decommissioned rig?
As an experienced diver, diving on an oil platform is unlike any other dive I've ever done. You're in a blue ocean setting. So there, you don't have that perspective of seeing the sea floor right beneath you. You are jumping into the blue and you're going down this structure that is like the scaffolding of a massive building. And there are beams and cross beams and so much life. It's such an engaging and thrilling dive. It's definitely one of my favorites. So I absolutely love it. And there are opportunities for anyone to really have the ability to go and dive these platforms. In California, there are several platforms you can dive in the Gulf of Mexico. And then in Malaysia, there's a platform called the Sea Ventures Dive Rig that the entire structure was retrofitted for ecotourism. So people can come and stay above the surface. So stay on the top side facility. They maintained everything in place. And, you sleep there. We've done a expedition there. So an Explorers Club flag expedition where we went and stayed on the platform. And then during the day, we would dive the platform reef and the surrounding reef environments. So it's a really exciting and thrilling dive.
Oops, there we go. Very cool. Here we go. Another question just came in here. Okay, so this is maybe looking at it from the oil company's perspective. Is it cost effective to them to be able to kind of leave and repurpose in this way instead of taking the whole structure down?
Yes. So one of the reasons why the oil company operators want to participate in this program is because there is a significant cost savings for them. To leave a portion of the platform in place will save them millions of dollars. And so they want to participate if their reef is a viable reefing candidate. And so what we've seen, especially in the United States, is that in order to capitalize on those savings, part of those savings actually goes back to the state into an endowment for marine preservation and conservation. And those funds will help to fuel departments of fish and wildlife as well as state-run conservation initiatives. So, for example, in California, if 23 of our 27 platforms were to be reefed, there would be over $1 billion in saved costs. Now, California has a rigs to reef law where 80% of those saved costs, so 80% of $1 billion, would go back to the state into that endowment for marine preservation and conservation. And 20% or $200 million would stay with the oil company's stakeholders. So it really is going to depend state by state, nation by nation about how they share those costs and those saved costs. But at the end of the day, it really creates this win-win-win scenario where the oil companies win because they have a financial incentive to win. The states win because they get a big endowment from the oil companies to fund the work that they do within the state. And then the environment wins where you are preserving and perpetuating an important reef ecosystem.
All right, excellent. Okay, we need to talk about inspiration because that's something that we always ask the speakers who hang out with us. So what pulled you into the ocean world in the first place? What was your inspiration?
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern California and I've always been so inspired and really so curious about the ocean. It's been in my backyard. I feel so fortunate to have really grown up playing in the tide pools. And in California, the offshore oil and gas platforms are just north of where I live. So growing up, I used to look out at them and think, oh my gosh, those look like, I used to think that they were robots that had crossed the Pacific to come and invade because they just look like these massive industrial giants. So then fast forward several years, I had the opportunity to research and dive on these platforms and change that narrative that there are actually these incredible reef ecosystems beneath the surface. But I've just always been so inspired by my childhood of growing up and my curiosity and love for the ocean and desire to protect it.
All right. I think we have one more question just popped in the chat. Let's see if we can squeeze it in. Actually, that's our Miss Cork's crew was just saying that's a lot of incentive for the oil platforms to keep them there. So it really is win-win kind of for everybody. Really cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to start off with a huge shout out to our classrooms. We had a great group with us online, lots of questions coming in via the discussion section. So thank you for those great questions. And Amber, it's the first time I've had the pleasure of hosting you. I think last year I hosted Emily in an event, but it's great to have you here with us and to share the amazing work Rigs to Reef is doing, as well as Blue Latitudes. Very cool.
Thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course. Classrooms, thank you so much. We hope to see you joining us throughout the rest of the week. And Amber, hopefully we can host you again, or maybe get both you and your co-founder in a call and talk more about Rigs to Reef and Blue Latitude.
Yeah, I hope so. All right. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. We are going to sign off for today.